Hello everybody, Bree here, and I'm really excited to share that today I have finished my Summer Aligned project. As I shared back in spring, Aligned is a seasonal prompt-based project shared within the Simple Scrapper community. It's one of my favorite places to be on the internet, and this project is kind of an alternative to doing a project lifestyle weekly layout based project. You get 12 or 13 prompts per season, so it averages out to generally about one a week, but they aren't things that where you have to capture every single thing that's going on, and it's a really good way to kind of seasonally connect with what is happening in your life and have a little bit of a different perspective on that. So I do keep doing these, and they seem to be getting larger and larger. You can see this time around, it is a rather hefty sort of folio. And I do think that in some ways, I'm going to pay for that a little bit. I think in the middle, because I'm holding it within this Heidi Swapp binder system, these are not made to go out that far. So this might have been, I'm kind of pushing the maximum, and I think I might be sort of like gouging into that bottom portion down here. And I think I'm going to pay for that a little bit. This one is a little bit thicker than the past ones because as I mentioned in my last video, I had actually started this project last year. I did a couple of the prompts, but then I moved, and I found that during spring and summer of last year, I was able to do a couple of the prompts, but in summer was where I actually did some more prompts that had some flip ups and things like that, and hence it's adding, in combination with all of them from this year, it's adding a lot more heft to this portfolio, which started out to be about this big. And so that's not happening. So you can see here that I do say that it's starting out for summer 2024. I just am accepting the imperfection and embracing the 2025 add-on here. And this also was my June overview for 2024. Again, I'm just kind of letting it ride. I'm not too worried about that. I'm glad to have this little bit of a different viewpoint here. And I kind of just put a little bit of, the important things that are happening, and plus kind of like an overview of how I'm feeling in this column. And in this year, I actually started adding in a daily low and high for the temperatures. I find that this year was a little bit weird for spring and summer in Northern Virginia. It was very rainy and very cold. We did get some really hot weeks here right in the middle, like towards the end of July and kind of the beginning of August. But overall, it's been pretty darn chilly as an overview of our year is concerned. And I can kind of look back on that here. I used some Heidi Swapp Stop the Blur stickers. I had kind of a couple collections of those that were just hanging around that I've been using for cards. And I decided to use them for their intended purpose, along with some stamping. There's some Allie Edwards Alphas are the best stamps, or Alphas are awesome stamps, sorry. And then I just sort of used some leftover rub-ons, and I really love how this turned out. You can kind of see that clearly swimming was the biggest part of our summer here. My daughter decided to join the swim team for the first time. It was kind of her first sport ever, and it was a really kind of, literally getting thrown in the deep end sort of situation, because they do practices and meets all the time. So we loved it. Her team went to divisionals. It was great. And then August, I'm actually really happy to have this done right at the last day of August. We had I went to go visit some friends. We had some family here. We had back to school events, some work events. And so I'm really kind of happy to have that overview here before I get into the seasonal aspect of my documenting. It's nice to have a little bit of chronology just to sort of support that. The first prompt in the aligned seasonal repertoire, they tend to kind of be the same prompts for the most part, but they might have a little bit of a different spin based on season. And so this is sort of an overview, getting kind of a way to break into some of your supplies and make a collage based on what you are thinking and feeling about summer. So this was really fun. I got to use this great cloud stencil. There's many versions of this out there. So if you haven't, if they look, because they all look a little weird, but when you go to use them. They're really fun and it's playful and it's a great way to kind of add like a little extra something, especially to this rainbow paper. It was a 12 by 12 paper and it doesn't quite stretch across. So I thought that was a really nice way to kind of buffer that. And they're really great for cards and things like that. I just love them. I think that's a great background and a really useful sort of stencil. I used some Ali Edwards Week in the Life items here. And then I got these great Hero Arts like neon stamps and I had so much fun with them, but then I realized I needed a couple of like distress oxides here to sort of balance off the colors in this rainbow. So it's not all neon, but I feel like it's enough to kind of balance each other out. I kind of dove headlong into layering some items. My approach for this year was to get one main collection from Simple Stories for each season, because I'm not a paper scrapbooker. And so this way I felt like, you know, during the first part of winter, I had a little bit of Christmassy leftover kind of holiday things that made it stretch, but I was really struggling to sort of add anything that was thematic because I don't really have much more than basic items like sentiments and things like that. And I just felt that it was, you know, high time to get a little bit of something that was more themed. And I did, and it was great. I really love what I got. Yeah, these are mostly Simple Stories collections for summer. I believe they're a couple years old. I apologize, I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it was really fun to balance some of those things out with the Hide to Swap Stop the Blur items and some rub-ons I had around. And this was sort of an overview of the things I was hoping for this summer. I started off the summer volunteering during World Pride World Pride in DC, and one of my friends actually had she was running the open water swim for one of her LGBTQ swim organizations, and they were swimming at National Harbor, and I did not realize that buoys were this large, so I had the lovely job of squishing them all and deflating them, and it was really fun and a super great way to start off the summer. This is the second prompt, and these tend to be kind of like a place to hold your ephemera as you kind of go throughout the month. I normally don't have that much, or else I actually don't usually think that I have that much, but it turns out that when I have a safe space to keep these things and I'm sort of putting them in throughout the season, it turns out I actually do have a lot of these things. So I just put a couple like overview sort of photos over here, but these are things like we got new beach towels this year. I've had the same towels for about 20 years, and they're just normal like bath towels, and they're small, they barely kind of wrap around your body. And this year with Abby being in swim, I decided that was not gonna cut it. We got Abby towards the end of the summer. We got her a new grown-up JanSport backpack. You know, for us 90s kids, we're, you know, feel the love there. And it was her first grown-up non-Disney kind of themed backpack. I really kind of fell headlong into the mocktail non-alcoholic beverage space this year. I've just sort of, for my own health, have kind of decided to move away from alcohol. And I have really enjoyed the fact that now they have so many different types of pre-done gin and tonics and margaritas that are non-alcoholic. And so when I feel like at the end of the day I can have a little something that has very little sugar and you know, kind of gives me that mental relaxation without any of the lack of benefits there. So I just thought that was important to document this year. You know, my daughter doing her swim-a-thon and some other things, and it was just nice to have a spot for those. And because I had a spot for those, it was just really easy to keep them. And so my daughter also gave me a challenge here. She was cleaning out some of her craft supplies, and she threw them on my desk and was like, "Mom, can you use those?" And, you know, she's little, and I was like, "Sure, I can." And then I was like, "I don't want to keep these in storage." So I just used it on the first page I was working on. And while they don't exactly match, I'm kind of fine with it. And it sort of inspired with some of the ephemera. It kind of brought in that color. So I was happy with it. This was documenting, again, you know, June, Pride Month. You know, in my family, it's really important that we participate in Pride. I'm in a very straight presenting relationship, and it is very easy for me to disconnect from the queer community. And so I thought it was really important that, we're starting to take our daughter to Pride. She's old enough now to kind of understand what's going on. And I was really excited that I kind of had a space to tell that story that wasn't just in our normal chronological scrapbooks. And one thing I really enjoyed doing with this spread was these were Ali Edwards papers from, I believe, the Love Collection, obviously, and I cut some of them up here. You can see I did the speech bubble, which I thought really nicely mirrored this Pride speech bubble. But what I really wanted to do was kind of add some sort of mixed media to it. So I added some rub-ons, but then to make this text stand out and not look so plain, because it was just kind of like this, non-layered section here, I added stickles and what's the Heidi Swapp glaze? Goodness gracious, I cannot remember off the top of my head. Glossy accents. There we go. Sorry, I was having a moment. So I added some glossy accents and I just kind of covered these whole letters. And it was a little bit of a mess, but I love how it turned out. And I cannot wait to try that again, just kind of going big with some of these kind of mediums that I have just laying around everywhere. This was covering our 4th of July celebrations. Abby's dad does a lot of Captain America cosplay and he volunteers with a lot of organizations. And so this was the first time we've got to see him in a 4th of July parade as Captain America with a bunch of other Captain Americas, and it was really great. So I kind of had to make a big deal about this. And then obviously some of our 4th of July photos. This was sort of like 4th of July week for us. And then I kind of just had some journaling about my current feelings about 4th of July and patriotism and kind of the state of things in America. I don't really want to super share that here, but if you know me, you know how I feel. But I thought that was really important to capture in this season of life because things are changing rapidly every day. And then this page was kind of like, what do we do for fun? What are some things that, what do you notice about summer? And I always think every year that summer is going to be the season that I go out and I do all of the things. But when I think about it, summer is really miserable in Northern Virginia. And that doesn't mean that I'm like mad about it or anything, but I am not going to be going out and doing a bunch of hikes, and I'm not going to do all these things that I always think that I'm going to aspirationally do, because without air conditioning, it's basically unbearable most seasons. Even on the days where, it was cooler than normal this season, but even with that, it's just like you walk outside and you're immediately drenched in sweat. There's no dry heat here. It's a swamp. And I actually live right next to wetlands, and it's just kind of unbearable to do these outdoor things. So I do a lot of reading during the summer. I sit on a screened porch in this new house. I have a screened porch with a big old fan up on the top, and it's in the shade. And I love it. So I just wanted to kind of take the chance to use some of those book collections we all have everywhere in a little bit of a different way. And I also added a lot of mixed media here. I did some Altenew stamping, more glossy accents on this one. And these simple story collections did have some book items in there. And I thought that was a really great kind of way to play with that. And part of my goal this season was to do a lot more saying yes to things like ice cream. I tend to be more of, and you can see here, I have kind of damaged a little bit the center part here up at the top. This is going to be a little bit problematic. I'm going to have to figure that out. But I really wanted to spend more time saying yes to things like summer treats this year. I feel like, with diet culture and, being raised in the 90s, it was always like, ooh, we definitely don't want to, go too far on a lot of this stuff. And, well, of course, there's always balance. I feel like a lot of that was reactive, and, the memories I want to have with my kid are not being like, no, we can never have ice cream together because it's not healthy or whatever, and all that. So I have a lot of thoughts on that. But this year was, we did say a lot more yes to snow cones and bedtime snacks and things like that. And you know what? The world did not burn. We had a lot of really good times and a lot of good memories. And I'm pretty sure there's nothing more my daughter loves than to hear the ice cream truck going through the neighborhood. And I am so glad that I didn't say no to all those things. But Again, that Simple Stories summer collection had a lot of pool and a lot of ice cream based items, probably more ice cream based items than I could ever use. And it was really fun to do some stamping and to use some of these die cuts and a little bit of mixed media. There's probably like 6 or 7 papers in here tucked away in different ways. And I really enjoyed it. This is kind of like one of the prompts is documenting sort of like a week in the life kind of situation during your season. And for us, that really was swim every week for the good majority of the season. And so I wanted to make sure I got that in here this year. And I sort of just wanted to kind of give it the pocket-based feel, even though it is not a pocket page. And so I divided these up into the equivalent of what would be like 3x4 sections and like 4x6. My daughter's team is the frogs, and so the frog was a really big, it was kind of great because now I have all these frog random embellishments and I didn't know I was ever going to use them. And these are actually left over from the Simple Stories spring collection that I used. And it was a great choice, you know, and it really worked well with, again, some of these pool-based items that were in the summer kit. So I was quite pleased. Used some Ali Edwards stamps here. And yeah, I feel like I kind of covered that and got a little bit of that information in here for this year. These are actually, this is where you're going to see some of these prompts from last year. Our garden looked a lot worse last year. We were going through a drought in Virginia. And actually for many years we had been in a drought in this part of Virginia, although people don't talk about East Coast droughts as much. But yeah, you can see that just my plants really suffered. This is where I did some of this work last year about transitions. We were doing back to school and colors of the year. And I'm so glad that I did that because like these colors are completely different this year. I have like my scrubs from last year when I had surgery and Lake Michigan blue. And because I flew to Chicago so many times last year, it just happened to work out that way that I had a lot of things with work and personal things. Mickey black because we went to Disney, Wrigley Field because, you know, I went and did some baseball games out there. Forged in Fire, my family was obsessed with. So this was a much different like color set, and I looked at color a different way last year, where when I do this prompt a little bit further down, you know, that's a different way to look at it. So I just sort of kept these, included them, and I'm happy that I have them. This, and there's always a play prompt in each of the seasons. Now, this one actually focused in the prompt was more on flowers and gardening and and again, it is so hot here that by the time summer comes, I am weeding some of my garden on Sundays during chore day, and I am just not participating in the rest, and I cannot. Also, I really feel like I heavily documented my garden in my spring aligned projects. So that seemed to feature really heavily. So, you know, the good thing is you can always sort of play and decide if you want to change things up. And for us this year, water play was really big. We did a lot of going, first of all, it was swim practice. And then I would often take off time and go to the pool with my daughter after her swim practices during the summer. We went to go visit family and they had a pool. They also lived near the Jersey Shore, so we did have some time at the Jersey Shore this year. And we went to a lot of water parks. Like there's tons of water parks in Northern Virginia, and we went to quite a few of them just for different events and things that were happening with groups that Abby was in and for ourselves. So I wanted to make sure that, because this was pretty unusual for us, we are people that burn very easily. So I wanted to make sure I caught this season of life that we spent a lot of time in the water. And so I had these pockets with this Simple Stories kit had, and you can see this kind of pulls back to that ice cream page. So I had a lot of things to say, and I made a pocket out of that because I was obsessed with this paper. You'll see this paper show up quite a few times in this book, and I was just obsessed with it, and I can't wait. I still have like 4 squares left, and I'm going to use them on cards or something. And then I really enjoyed doing some of these word stacks. These are actually Ali Edwards attachers. I had kind of made a mistake when I started doing this insert, and I was like, oh, I can use the back and the front, but like once you use a double-sided paper, like you have nowhere to do an insert flap to make something go tuck in under these pages. So I ended up having to use an attacher there. And that actually does kind of bulk out the album quite a bit. You'll see here, because it doesn't fully, like, it closes pretty well, but you do have to be prepared for that bulk. It's not quite the same. You know, you're adding probably like 1/8 of an inch just of folding there. And so this actually, there is a prompt each season for like things that you're watching and hearing and things like that. And so even though I'm doing play here, I wanted to make sure I covered music, because summer and music are pretty tied in my memories. So I had some of my memories, and then how, I remember going to concerts, and I remember classic rock always blaring when I was a kid. Being on the motorcycle with my stepdad's motorcycle, and having, Tom Petty blaring, and now everything is curated playlists, which is not bad. It's actually really fun in a certain way, but it is not the same. It's a different methodology of you're listening and making memories to music. So, and then I wanted to make sure I got that time at the shore in. And so I used some of these Heidi Swapp sleeves. And there's photos and there's more journaling on the back here. I did do some mixed media here with some Ranger glitters. I think Simon Hurley glitter pastes that he has, and then some flip ups. So it was really important for me to get in the water this year and really participate in some family stuff. And I'm really glad that I did. This is, as each season also has a transition prompt, and I actually did the transition prompt here last year, and this was, you can see I labeled it transitions, and I made sure that I labeled them 2024. And so I did my daughter's school transition and some other transitions I was going through. And this time I just sort of covered our whole family and our back to school traditions. We always make sure that right before back to school we have a nice campfire, we do s'mores, we do grilling. And this year was the first year that my daughter was able to help grill the corn and do some other things. It's really interesting having a kid who's getting older. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of captured that. And I really wanted to play with these Allie Edwards flower stamps. It was from her Stamps Are Awesome, or Stamps Fun collection or whatever that she does every month. And I don't always use these subscriptions really well, and so I've been trying to make it a point, and I had such fun, and I love the colors. They went really well with this paper. This is all one paper that I chopped up, and then an old Allie, during that Love collection, I believe, I have another sheet there. So this is my take on colors for this year, because we did have so much rain. Everything was blue and green and gray. It was thunderstorms, it was vibrant plants, it was, just bright blue skies when it wasn't pouring. Like, everything was just so saturated this year because we broke the drought. And I wanted to make sure I kind of copied that with the wetness. And these are all distress inks, except for this one, I believe, is a Concord and Ninth, and I just did a bunch of mixed media and stamping. Note to everybody that rub-ons just don't enjoy going on distress inks, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because of that chalk-based dust when it dries. But I definitely made some quote-unquote errors here, and found myself trying to like patch up things once the rub-ons were like, nope, girl, you ain't sticking, stop it. And then these were some Allie Edwards color cards that I'd saved from one of her story, like how she does like the pets and the colors and all those things. She does these small collections. I made sure I had some of those left over. And then this is sort of just wrapping up things that you learned from the season. So these are things that and it's also a prompt that inspires you to kind of use up some of your leftover product because you're sort of done with the season. So I used a lot of rub-ons and these Simple Story Summer Collection. This is one paper that I decided to cut and then punch out. Like, I made a notch with a circle punch, and I used some extra rub-ons and stickers, and just for a little bit of fun, because it was like, whatever, I have all this stuff left over. And it's amazing how far these collections go. They feel like they're so big now. And but yeah, and so I just had some thoughts there, mostly about, even though summer is kind of miserable weather-wise, it's just important to participate in it, even though I don't go outside as much. It's like, we don't always have to be perfectly air-conditioned, and we don't always have to be, kind of avoiding these difficult things. We can go out even and embrace the discomfort because, you know, a quarter of the year is super hot. So these are, it's sort of, it is very easy for me to just wait for the perfect fall conditions. But side note, I am really, really excited for fall. So, you know, whatever. And then this, I did this in winter, and I realized I didn't do it for spring. So I kind of went back actually and updated my spring collection or spring folio, but I decided to have each season have this same font. And then these are really old digital garlands from British Designs, and I love them. There's enough for each season. So I had already done winter. I went back and I did a spring with a pink floral garland here. And then, yeah, just kind of look at my backyard for each season. And I love that the deer have decided to come and eat my garden, and, you know, I'm fine with that because there's way too many weeds back there. So anyway, that is the end of my overview. Thank you so much for looking, and I cannot wait to come back at the end of fall and show you the culmination of this project. Thanks so much. Bye.